Amen. Amen. We're going to talk Nehemiah 6. So last week, we talked about what's it look like for the enemy to begin to work inside. This week, we're going to look at what's it look like for the enemy to begin to kind of attack from the outside, to take some kind of perspectives and some angles in on what's going on outside of what we're doing. A few weeks back, I was traveling, and so I got this text from Lindsay about just a trip that she had taken to the boys. She took the boys to the park. And she told them right when she drove up, she said, okay, here's the rule. If somebody comes up to you and they're like, they have candy and they're trying to get you in the van, don't go, right? Basic kind of information. But Grayson, sharp as he is, goes, but what if it's chocolate? And even Lindsay goes, it was kind of a question mark, right? No. And then she goes, no, not even it's chocolate. And he goes, you could tell you're struggling with, I don't know if that's going to be a play it by ear type of situation. And one of the things that we realize, right, is that the enemy, we all know the very overt tactics of Satan, of the enemy. I think we're going to stay away from a lot of, right, you don't have to tell your kids, hey, if somebody comes up to you and says, I'm going to kidnap you, you don't have to warn them about that, right? They're not like, okay, so kidnap's the thing I don't want to be a part of. Like, you tell them about candy, or if they tell you about ice cream, or you're talking about all the things that would make a kid go, but he's nice. This guy's a friend of mine. He's got the things I want. And it's interesting as we jump into this story of a leader, Nehemiah, running and taking his job, his responsibility that God's calling him to do. All of chapter 6 begins to use these clever tactics of the enemy because the overt ones aren't working. Right? The overt ones of constantly trying to get him to stop the attack, to stop the building, to stop the growth aren't working. And so he has to take the deceptive, creative, how do we change these tactics? And it's interesting, one of the things that we could do we fall into these kind of traps all the time. How many of you have gotten the email from the Nigerian prince who has a lot of money to give you, right? Now be honest, how many of you have clicked on it? Right? Like nobody reads that and goes, really? So I'm trying to figure out who keeps sending them. Like they're working somewhere. Or they wouldn't keep sending. Or you have a family member that have hundreds of thousands of dollars waiting for you to just click on this email. And it's interesting, these tactics, they keep switching them because people are falling for them. People are falling into these tactics, into these ways, and I think it's more and more interesting that as much as I go, really, every time I see one of those emails, I'm going, really? Somebody fell for this? And then Satan's like, well, I got you too. I got your little things that you don't look for. I got your little tactics and the little things that you switch over. So let's start in verse 6, or chapter 6, verse 1. What we're going to see as we unpack this is Nehemiah is building this wall. We're going to see this. He finishes it. And as he's building this wall, as he has it going, there's these 3 leaders that keep on trying to beat him down, keep on the enemy that's trying to get him. Verse 1, now when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arab and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built the wall and that there was no breach left in it. Let me just stop there. So here's one of the big things. The wall is finished, and the enemy's still going to go after him. Like, there isn't once you get to that point, the enemy goes, okay, I'm going to quit. That's a lot. I didn't know you were going to finish there. Like youth, let me just say this. In the world of struggling with just sexuality and everything, it's not once I get married, the enemy goes, oh, he got married, we're out. I didn't think he was going to get married. That takes care of everything. Like the enemy's still going to go after you. There's not like this, oh, you achieved it. For people struggling with busyness and for work and achievement, it's not once you hit retirement, he's going to go, oh, look, he finished. I'm not going to have to attack him anymore. For those that get caught up in your kids and just serving your kids and making your kids the number one priority, it's not once they get out of the house that he's going to go, oh, gosh, I don't need to attack there anymore. He just finished the project. It's interesting that even when it's completed, the enemy steps in even more so. The enemy is relentless, and he's not going to stop just when you've completed your thing. He's going to keep going after you. Verse 1, now when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arab and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built the wall and that there was no breach left in it, although up to that time I had not set up the doors and the gates. I like how honest Nehemiah is. Like I'd finished except for some of it. Like this is how I do all home projects. But we're done. There's just no doors. Finish the house. But keep going. Verse 2, that's side note. There's nothing theological about that. That's just... Verse 2, Sanballat and Geshem sent to me, saying, come and let us meet together at Hakkephirim in the plain of Ono. That's going to be really, oh no. Like, just remember that. Like, oh no, okay? Because we're going to hit that. But they intended to do me harm. When they intend to do you harm, what do you say? Oh no. So, stay with that. And I sent messengers to them saying, I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? Verse 4, and they sent to me 4 times in this way, and I answered them in the same manner. So he finishes the wall, and the enemy continues to pursue, continues to go after, continues to try to get him. Here's where we're going to see 4 clever tactics that the enemy takes, and I think he takes it in each of our lives to try to break you down, to try to get you to stop, to try to get you away from your project. And the first one we see in these first 4 verses is isolation. Isolation. They sent letters and they're like, hey, why don't you come down to this place called Ono? Why don't you come down to this area? It's about a day's journey away. Why don't you walk a day's journey? Why don't we isolate you from the rest of your people, from your project, from your tribe, from anybody who can fight for you? Let's isolate you. Let's pull you away. If I can isolate you, I can win. Isn't it clever how the enemy does that to us? He wants to pull us out of our situation. Some of it's physically. If he can make you busy enough, if he can put so much busyness into your life, he will isolate you from your community, from your family, from your accountability people, from whatever it is. If he can isolate you, if he can make you travel enough, if he can make you just go, he can isolate you. He'll do it through technology. He'll do it through TV. He'll do it through your work. He'll do whatever he has to try to physically isolate you from the people. He'll isolate you from your family, friends, because when he can isolate you away from that, he can start filling your mind with whatever he wants to. Right? You have nothing else speaking into your mind, your heart, your soul, so he can start filling it in if he can isolate you and pull you out. He also will isolate you emotionally. He'll start telling your head things that you would never believe if other people or other things were speaking into your heart, your mind, your soul. He emotionally starts telling you things like, you're the only one dealing with this. You're the only one not married. Statistically, it's not true, but if he can isolate you, he can tell you, you're the only one that's not married. You're the only one that's gone through divorce. You're the only one who's not ahead financially. You're the only one that doesn't have your retirement set. You're the only one who doesn't love your church. You're the only one who has messed up parents. It's amazing how quickly the enemy will begin to isolate you emotionally from everybody else by just telling you whatever he wants and just filling your mind, your heart, your soul with whatever the enemy wants to tell you. And we even know this, right? So he doesn't do it. It's not like the loudest. He's not going to yell at you. He just does it through small whispers. He does it through a Facebook post. He does it through a TV show. You're the only one that didn't get to go on vacation this summer because you're broke. You're the only one. You're the only one whose parents don't love you enough to do X. He isolates you. If he can isolate you, he wins. And so it's interesting that that's a tactic that the enemy wants to go at. He wants to do it. So this week, youth, you are all together, right? 40, 80 of you all together, talking every week, every day. Hey, we're all going to do devotion time. Now we're going to do worship time. Is the enemy going to come in going, I think I can win this one? He's going to wait and go, let's wait till they get home. because he's going to be alone by himself in his room with his phone, and I can do whatever I want to him. Let's wait and let's isolate, because then I can attack. It's interesting that the enemy pulls him, says, why don't you come to Ono so that you don't have any of your community around you? What else does he do there? So he calls him. The second thing in these first four verses is that he tries to delay the project, right? If I can just slow you down, if I can just delay you enough, you won't accomplish what you want to. Hey, why don't you come down here, again, a day's journey away? And how does Nehemiah respond? I sent messengers to them saying, I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? I am doing a great work. I love so we're talking about leadership, right? One of the strongest things that you can do as a leader, as the husband, as the father, is say no. No. My family's not going to be a part of that. My family's not going to invest the time in that. No, we're not going to come hang out with you. No, we're not going to be a part of that ministry in the church. No, we're not going to, whatever it is, one of the greatest strengths that you have as a leader is the ability and godliness to say no. Because I know if I'm Nehemiah, which I am too much, I'm a people pleaser, and these three real strong leaders are like, hey, come hang out, we want to talk with you. I'm like, okay, cool. Three big leaders want to talk to me. Like, these are strong, influential people. So I'm going to go to my family and go, hey, I can't make it to dinner tonight because I need to go hang out with these guys. I know. I told you I'd be at dinner. But they're really strong. They're leaders of whole countries. Why would you not want that for me and for us? Like, it's amazing how much I can tell. It's just for us. Like, and what he wants to do is begin to delay the process, pull you away and delay the process of no. If the enemy can't keep you from doing something, he'll just delay you in doing it. He'll just put you on almost a spiritual treadmill that you just won't get anywhere. C.S. Lewis in Screwtape Letters says this, you will find that anything or nothing is sufficient to attract his wandering attention. You no longer need a good book, which he really likes, to keep him from his prayers or his work or his sleep. A column of advertisements in yesterday's paper will do. You can make him do nothing at all for long periods of time. The enemy will just get you wasting your time so that you can't accomplish the work that you want to do. So our situation's not like this, right? We're building a wall and people a day's journey sends a letter and you read it and it's these big leaders. But it is like, hey, you should spend time praying, or your favorite show's on. You could, really get to work discipling your family, or just rest because it's really a crazy week. You could go out on a date for your wife, or save that money because it's really difficult. You could lead your group at work, or, just make sure everybody's doing their thing because we've got to produce. It's amazing how quickly we'll step away from the things that we want to. John Piper tweeted one time, one of the great uses of Twitter and Facebook will be to prove at the last day that prayerlessness was not from a lack of time. It's really fascinating, this idea that Satan will use any tactic possible to try to just get to waste your time, because then it'll keep you from the project that you're going after. Why don't you come hang out with me in Ono? Why don't you come talk with us in Ono, and we'll see some neat stuff happen. Go with me to verse 5. In the same way, Sanballat for the 5th time sent his servant to me with an open letter in his hand. So here you have, they've sent some letters, or they've sent some messengers up, they've tried to distract him, they've tried to get him over to Ono to hang out, to have all this kind of stuff. 4 times this has happened, and every time he sends it and goes, not coming, not coming, not coming. So finally they said, okay, here's what we're going to do. Let's send an open letter. What's an open letter? And then the whole town heard of it. It's not closed, just secret, just an email between us. So it's not an email between one person to another where just those 2 people read it. This is a billboard for the entire community to hear it. It's a billboard for the whole city to hear what's going on in this letter. So what they decide to do is now let's use some public persuasion. Let's start getting more people involved. Let's start telling more people about what's going on. In the same way, Sanballat, for the 5th time, sent his servant to me with an open letter in his hand. Verse 6, in it was written, it is reported among the nations, and Geshem, who also says it, that you and the Jews intend to rebel. That is why you are building the wall. And according to these reports, you wish to become their king. And you have also set up prophets to proclaim concerning you in Jerusalem. There is a king in Judah, and now the king will hear of these reports. So now come and let us take counsel together. So here's what he begins to say. Let's tell everybody that you have this big plan to ruin everything. So what does the enemy do? He distorts. The enemy will start distorting the words you say. They'll start distorting your character. He'll do whatever he can to start manipulating the situation over. If he can't get you in isolation, if he can't get you emotionally, physically away from everybody, if he can't get you just to delay the process you're still focused on, he's going to start using outside tactics to distort who you are, what your job is, what you want to do. He'll start twisting it. It's interesting that this letter has so many deceptive things. First thing is the enemy acts like he is Nehemiah's best friend here, right? The enemy's not going to come at you like acting like, hey, I hate you, so let me hurt you. Because nobody's going to go, I'm in. Yeah, this sounds good. You'll immediately be kind of defensive. But he comes up like one of your best friends, you start letting him in, right? Nobody comes to your house with a shirt that says thief. You're like, honey, I'm not sure about this guy. Should we let him in? His shirt says thief. He gave me a card and it says I'm stealing. So what should we, entryway only kind of a person? How should we handle this? No, he dressed like an AT&T repair guy, and we need that. Right? He says he's a plumber. He says he's here to fix did you call about that? It's interesting. He's going to start acting like it's somebody that you need and want to be a part of your life. He uses someone really close to distort the message, to start telling things that are just insanely not true and inaccurate. Really fascinating that that's how the enemy is going to go after it. Secondly, he was trying to get Nehemiah to respond out of fear. Right? You start hearing this. You have a job, you have a project, you're going after it, and the enemy starts distorting and starts twisting and starts saying, oh my gosh, look at all these things that are going to happen. And what he's ultimately bringing up is, you want to be king, and so he's trying to get even the king to come after him. Because if he can get the king to come after him, if he can get the king to respond to him, then all of a sudden now you're kind of backing him to a corner and he has to respond. And I love the idea that he begins to act this out, begins to pull it out, going, okay, if you're not going to respond to this, if you're not going to respond to isolation, if you're not going to be delayed, I'm going to start distorting your words, and I'm going to get the people that you value really highly to turn on you. And if I can get the people that you value really highly to turn on you, then I win. If we can get you to fear them, we can get whatever we want. Listen to this really fascinating way to control people, right? Mental confusion, contradiction of feeling, indecisiveness, panic. These are our weapons. Who wrote that? Hitler, in his attempt to switch people over. Satan's not too far from using these tactics. Let's get you to be indecisive. Let's get you mental confusion. You don't know what to do or where we should go. You should have a contradiction of feelings. You should begin to panic inside. If we can get these things to happen, we can get you out of the project God's called you to do. Whatever project that is, whether it's to love and lead your family well, whether it's to care, serve, and honor your wife well, whether it's to lead your people at work, whatever it is. Maybe God's called you to be in a school and you're a teacher and a leader, and you know what? The fear is constantly, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my job. I can't do that. I'm going to lose my job. And the enemy is going to use any tactic possible to try to get you away from it. He'll use any tactic possible to win. The third thing is that this letter also may have contained some truth, right? The enemy is not going to have such blatant lies that it's just like so clear cut. Like you go, that's a lie. You know, you're not going to call you up and go, your wife hates you. You're like, do you? Not really. Okay, see? I just checked. But what he is going to do is use those little subtle things to slowly distract you. When he throws this out there that, hey, they think that you might be this king, that you're trying to make yourself out to be a king, and there's people saying this. There were actually people that believed, because of the messianic promise, that there was this coming king, and Nehemiah might be him. And so there was kind of whispers that Nehemiah was setting himself up to be the king. And so he goes after it. He'll use the things that are very real. He'll use things that are just subtly twisted. One of the things that's interesting about Satan's tactics is that he doesn't invent stuff. He just twists things. You can read all of Genesis 1, Genesis 2, as you begin to read the fall. Satan's not creating sins, right? He just takes good things God has and twists them. It's really fascinating to see that he doesn't invent sin. There's no sin that you can find that Satan created it. He just twisted it. Whenever you see in the garden, God's like, you can eat anything that you want except for from this tree. Satan goes, did he really say that? He starts twisting, right? He starts just slowly manipulating. Did he really say you would die? Did he really say? I mean, he begins to twist and manipulate. And it's interesting how that's a much better tactic from an enemy than just blatant, outright things that you could just pick off going, that's not right. That doesn't seem truthful. Just slowly manipulating it. When people actually used to have paper money, they called it cash. When people used to have it and they would try to get people to be able to feel and see that something's not right, feel a counterfeit, you know how they would train people in doing that? They would give them 1,000 bills that were all real. And then in there, they would put one that was a counterfeit. Because they knew if they could get you to feel what was real, you could be able to detect counterfeit. What they wouldn't do is just give you a bunch of counterfeits and say, try to figure out which ones. If you could feel and see and smell and all of those things, don't taste it, but all those things, if you had all that, you could tell which ones are counterfeit. Because you knew what was true and what was real. If the enemy can't isolate you, he'll try to delay you. If he can't delay you, he'll begin just to distort who you are. He'll begin to distort reality. He'll begin to distort truth. And then the last one is he'll ultimately just try to destroy you. Verses 8 through 13. Then I sent to him, saying, no such things as you say have been done. For you are inventing them out of your own mind. For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking their hands will drop from the work, and it will not be done. But now, O God, strengthen my hands. Verse 10. Now when I went into the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, son of Mehetabel, who was confined to his home, he said, let us meet together in the house of God within the temple. Let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. They are coming to kill you by night. Stop right there. So look at what he does. He uses this guy, Shemaiah. He begins to use him to talk to him going, hey, get Nehemiah to come over here. Now, first off, we see Nehemiah is pretty aware of the situation, right? Can kind of see, I've got this great work, I've got a big wall, the enemy keeps sending messengers over here, they used an open letter, and then all of a sudden this guy Shemaiah says, hey, why don't you come to the temple? Why don't you come over? I need help. He's in this house arrest type of a thing that he put himself in. So what's fascinating is Nehemiah would have had to trust this guy. He's not just going to go, oh, cool, yeah, you need me? I'm there. Like there's been so many situations that have popped up that Nehemiah's probably gone, somebody's still trying to take me out. Somebody's still, but yet he goes. He goes to this guy that he trusted. He goes to his house. He goes and sits there with them. Let us meet together in the house of God within the temple. Let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. So not only does he use someone that he knows, he's also saying, I'm going to try to keep assassins away from you because there's people that are trying to kill you. If we can get in the temple and lock the doors, then we'll be completely safe. This is from somebody he knows. I can't say this enough. The enemy is going to use somebody you know. He's not going to use just this crazy person out there all the time. He's going to try to use somebody you know and you trust. One of the hardest statistics out there is that if you look at kids who have been molested, the large percentage of them came from people they know. Why? Because it's trusted. The people around them trusted them. They trusted them. The enemy will use people that are close to you because you trust them. They're not going to use some whacked out person to come in because you'll be tipped off to it. The enemy uses people that you trust, and he begins to use this guy Shemaiah to try to pull him in, to try to win him in, try to get him into the temple. Let us meet together in the house of God within the temple. Let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. They are coming to kill you by night. He's trying to get them in. And why is he trying to get them in the temple? So many things here of why he's trying to get him in the temple. One is that if he can get him in the temple, he knows that he's violated a law of God, and everybody who Nehemiah has ever been around will know he just violated one of God's laws. Nehemiah wasn't allowed to go in the temple. And so he's trying to get him to violate the rules and the lies of God and the laws of God subtly through his lies and through his deception. If he can get you just to slowly go down a slippery slope, he'll win. He just wants to slowly get you in. He doesn't want to make it this overtly blatant thing. He just wants to get you slowly. And you'll do it out of protection for yourself too often. Come in here. There's people coming to kill you. Come in the temple. We'll guard you in this way. And he begins to say, just come on. We'll protect you in this. We'll get you in this. How does Nehemiah know that this isn't true? The first one is that God would never pull you away from the project that he's given you when you're this close to completion. That's one of the ways Nehemiah knows. I'm almost done with this big, great wall that I was challenged by God to do, that I was given by God to do, that I was go to lead this, and he's not going to pull me away right at the end to go do something he's not supposed to. The other thing is that it was completely against what he said to do. It was completely against what he said to do. Go back to verse 11. But I said, should such a man as I run away, and that man such as I could go into the temple and live, I will not go in. And I understood and saw that God had not sent him, but he had pronounced the prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. For this purpose he was hired, that I should be afraid and act in this way and sin, so that they could give me a bad name in order to taunt me. You can see that there's this huge drive by the enemy, not only to distort, not only to distract, not only to delay, not only to isolate, but ultimately to destroy reputation, character, your relationship with God. Anything he can, he's going after to try to completely break it down. Even if, look at all these tactics, even if he can get him to go in there, and even God would say, hey, I understood. You were under attack. They said the enemies were coming. I understood why you went in the temple. I'm a God bigger than this. I get it. He now has all the people that he has slowly won over and that he's been leading that said, but you violated a law of God. As a leader, Satan's trying to just get you to slip up a little bit so that everybody underneath you can see, oh, that's an okay thing to do. It's an okay step to make. If he can get you falling into, as a dad, if he can get you to fall into whatever trap he wants, now your kids have full permission to do it as well, if the situation's necessary. Right? He begins to open up tunnels to try to distract and try to win and try to just distort you more and more and more. If he can win you over, then he can see that he can completely go in and change everything. In the movie Kingdom of Heaven, it reminds me a lot of what's happening with Nehemiah and the wall. In the movie Kingdom of Heaven, you have, they're protecting Jerusalem, they're protecting the walls, they're protecting what's going on, and the Muslims are heading towards them, and they're going to destroy them, and they're complete, all their armies are moving towards them, and there's this whole dialogue, probably the climax of the movie, this really powerful time, when he comes up, and they said, "What are we going to do?" And the priest, right, the religious leader of the whole group, the priest says, "Convert to Islam, repent later." Right? The enemies are bearing down. They're coming out. They're going to lose their lives. So the leader, the religious leader, says, "Convert to Islam, repent later." And the leader, the military leader, looks at him and says, "You've taught me a lot about religion. Thank you." And turns around to go fight. And it's amazing. I looked at that, and I find myself too often that religious leader. We need to be generous people. We need to give. We need to just be... Where did that bill come from? Pull it all in. Let's quit. Like, how much did we give to the church this month? How much do we, It's amazing how quickly I show my family generosity stops when things get hard for us. It's amazing how much I'm like, let's love our neighbors, let's care for our neighbors, let's really go after and serve them. Oh gosh, they look dangerous. Don't talk to them. It's as soon as it seems like there's a threat, I switch teams all the time. I mean, I literally would love to think that I'm not that guy, but I think too often I am the priest, that as soon as that enemy starts bearing down, I'm like, convert to whatever we need to. We'll ask for repentance later. Church is coming up on Sunday, and I think they're going to have a good response time because I will be at the front. That's kind of the mentality that I have, the mindset that I have. Run away from the problem, guard yourself, and you'll be okay. As Nehemiah continues to lead his people, I think it's fascinating. Chapter 5 was all how internally they begin to fall apart, right? Their families and the community begins to kind of self-break down. They begin to struggle internally, and now they build back up, and he's finishing the wall, and now the enemy decides to attack from outside. The enemy's not going to relent on you. He's going to go after you if you are a threat. And so with that, I want to talk to 3 people in the room. One is the enemy is not attacking you. And I just want to be completely honest. It's probably because you're not a threat. Right? If I'm a basketball coach and I've got 5 guys on this team, they're all out on the field, all on the court, and there's 5 guys on this team, and one can't dribble or can't shoot, I'm not like, we need somebody defending him. I'm just going, he kind of defends himself. So let's double team the guy that actually could beat us. Let's try that tactic, right? If you're not a threat, Satan's not going to go after you. He's going to just let you fall apart. So I want to say that I truly believe, and I think there's seasons in my life where I'm this guy, that I'm not a threat to any kingdom change happening whatsoever. And so Satan really has just said, let's not bother him. He's his worst enemy. And so I want to talk, if that's you, I want to encourage you to get in the game, to be a part of transformation, to be part. And what do these subtle things look like? They look like you're not a generous person at all. You don't love and care for the people around you at all. You don't sacrifice for your neighbors, for your friends, for your family. Your family's not being discipled and prayed over and cared for. Your work people are not being touched at all by the gospel because you just use it as a workplace and that's it. You're not a threat at all. Satan's not going after the guys not building the wall. And so I want to speak into those that if you're not in the game, if you're not spending time in Scripture and praying and going after stuff and being a generous person, Satan really will, and it'll be a really good place for you. I'm going to be honest. Because you're not getting touched, you're not being hurt by Satan, you're not being pursued, you're not being threatened. It's just this subtle place. And you go, man, this is pretty good. But you're also not doing any transformation. You're not changing anything. A few years back, I decided that I was going to start working out, mostly because the people around me were telling me I was fat. And so I started trying to work out, and I would do these different exercises, and I'm like, man, I can do 100 reps of these. This is the easiest thing ever. My brother-in-law was kind of helping me train, and he's like, well, that's because you're doing it wrong and not using enough weight, and you look ridiculous. And so, as I was sitting, he goes, why don't you bend your knees, and did some, and immediately I'm like, and I did 1 rep of 4 pounds. And so once I knocked that out, and sweat was coming out, I was like, that's not fun at all. And he's like, yeah, it's hard. But a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, got a little bit stronger. I was the one opening the jars and not my wife. I mean, there were things happening. And I began to go, oh my gosh, this is worth it. It's worth it. The pain, the energy, the time, it's worth it. And I began to see more and more that, the enemy is going to attack you, but you begin to see your family discipled, your wife flourishing, your kids doing extremely well, your company actually changes because you are putting the gospel tangibly into your team at work, into your school, into wherever you are. It's worth it. The second group in the room is that, you know what, you're currently under attack right now. The enemy's going full bore at you. And you can see you're beginning to get isolated. You can begin to see that he's slowly moving you out. He's taking you out of your church world more and more and more. Maybe he's putting you into a world of where you can't find a church you like. And so in your desire to say, yes, I'm actually trying to find a church you like, Satan has won by just making you in this kind of merry-go-round of visiting churches. Maybe he's kind of began to put some animosity between you and your wife, and so it's easier just to step back and isolate yourself rather than have to address the issue. Maybe you can really look at yourself and say, I have no close friends who ever speak into my life. They always say, hey, what's up, buddy? Yeah, we got a lot of guys that we go watch games together, and I've never told them about my deepest hurts and pains. And so it begins to isolate you more and more and more. He begins to destroy your reputation. He begins just to go after you. And this is one of those really fascinating things that, for one, I want to say that you're actually in a good place. Because the enemy's not attacking people that aren't a threat. So I want to encourage you with that first and foremost. I want to encourage you that you're in a good place. Second thing, I want to encourage you to fight against the real reality of you getting isolated, of you falling into any of these tactics that the enemy wants to win over. The last one is that somebody's actually in this room, you were on the front lines and you took some shots. You took some brutal shots, maybe even by the people closest to you. That's who attacked Nehemiah. Maybe it was by the mentor that you really respected. Maybe it was by the wife that you thought loved you. Maybe it was by the dad that you thought actually cared about you. And you took the most shots, the most hits, the most brutalness from them. For one, I want you to realize that, again, the enemy is going to use anybody he possibly can to go after you. People you love, people you cared about, people that actually you thought, I thought this guy liked me. And the challenge is that you're going to use that to blame God instead of seeing it as the enemy using whatever he can. And you're going to say, I hate church, I hate God, I hate this person, why would God do that to me? Anything possible, you're going to use it because that's what Satan wants to do. He wants to convince you that God hates you. So what I want to do is just spend some time responding. And if those are the three people in the room, I want you just to kind of look at your heart as we look at God wants to destroy our enemy wants to destroy what God wants to do through these people, through this church, through Wellspring. And he'll start with your marriage. He'll start with your family. He'll start with just you by yourself, and he'll go after you.